When cutting fabric using Marti Michell templates, you're going to be cutting a little bit different direction than what you're accustomed to. Typically, you would be used to cutting your fabric from left to right. When you're using the Marti Michell templates, you're going to be cutting your fabric from right to left. Begin by laying your fabric out on your mat, lining up your selvage edge with the one bottom edge of your mat. Take your rotary ruler and your cutter to square up the right edge of your fabric. We're going to begin with fabric A so we can make the Jacob's Road block from the Lazy Afternoon pattern. Once we have that squared edge, we need to cut 4 number 8, the 4-inch blocks from the template set B. Using Marti's method, we'll lay the template square on the edge of our fabric and then lay our ruler next to the template square. Again, making sure that it is square with our mat. I like to go ahead and take my template set and move it on up to the end of the fabric as well to make sure that my cut is going to be uniform on both ends of my fabric. I'm going to cut 1 strip equal to that template set. Use your square to cut each of your square sets. I'm cutting through all 4 layers of fabric at the same time. So I've cut in 4, 8, 12, 16, and I need 1 more square, so I will open up a remaining piece of my fabric and cut my final square. You'll now take each of your square sets and using your Marti Michell template number 8, you will place the square template on top of your square set and take your rotary cutter and ruler. Taking your rotary cutter, you will go ahead and notch off those corner units. This is where I like to use a backside of an old cutting mat, because then I can spin the mat so I can cut the squares and notch those off easily. Notch off that square, turn my mat, notch off the next square. Notch my square to engineer the corner, notch the next square, you'll notice that by just turning the mat, it's very simple to make a notch on all of the engineered corners. You'll now get out fabric B. You'll use the same method to square up the right-hand edge of the fabric. And again, we're going to be using block 8, the square. So you'll set the square on your fabric, lined up with the right-hand edge, and then lay the ruler behind that square, checking both the top and the bottom. to make sure that you have that 4-inch strip cut perfectly. You'll go ahead and cut that strip and set your 4-inch strip aside. In step number 2, we'll be making the number 12 squares. We need 4 of those. From the remaining piece of your fabric B, go ahead and remove your selvage and then use your square, number 12, in the same way that we did with square 8, we're going to use the number 12 square to make sure that our cut will work for that particular square. We need to make 2 cuts because there are 4 blocks and there's not enough room on the fabric to get the blocks out of 1 cut. You can certainly put the 4 fabrics together to cut your block. Again, make sure that you cut the engineered corners for your block. You'll set these 4 number 12 blocks aside. They're for a different block unit. For step 3 of the Jacob's row block, we'll be demonstrating a chain cutting and chain piecing technique. By chain cutting and chain piecing, you can go much quicker in making your blocks. Begin by taking your fabric C, which is your background fabric, and your fabric D, which is your high contrast fabric, and layering them on top of each other on your cutting mat. You'll use the same method that we've used previously to square one edge. With that one side squared, we're ready to begin cutting our units. We'll be using template 9, which is the half square unit for Marti's template B set. You'll take template 9 and using the straight of grain arrow, place it closest to your selvage on the bottom of your fabric. Lay your ruler even with the edge of the template. Again, just like we've done previously, we're going to check the width before cutting our strip to make sure that the strip is the correct width. Now that I have the strip the correct width, I'm going to go ahead and cut that strip. And set it aside. We'll need 2 strips of each fabric. After cutting 2 strips of set C and D, you can take your remaining C and D fabric and set it aside. Now, we said that we're going to be chain piecing these blocks, so it's important that we put the strips together with right sides together. I like to put all 4 fabrics together, matching my selvages and my strip. Laying your fabrics out so that they're perfectly equal is the most important part before making these cuts. We'll begin by removing the selvage. We have a square edge on both sides, and now we're ready to use our template. You'll lay your template on the fabric, matching up the straight grain with the bottom edge of your selvage. Take your rotary cutter and ruler, make that cut. Pull the block set aside. Flip your ruler or your template over. Make the straight cut. Pull the block aside. And continue until you have made all 16 pairs of these triangle units. Once you have all your number 9 triangle sets cut, you'll want to notch those engineered corners. Again, I like to use a mat that I can just turn the mat. Continue until you have all 16 sets complete. Okay, now we're ready to just start constructing the Jacob's road block. Because we cut our fabrics right sides together, we'll be able to chain piece these half square units and make it go much more quickly. If you do not know how to chain piece, please refer to page 7 of Marti's instructions where she describes chain piecing in more detail. When chain piecing, I like to begin with a small strip of fabric that I call a beginner, and I put that into my machine first. And as it works its way through the machine, I go ahead and I put my first half square unit in. And as it's continuing through the machine, I just add my next half square. So it ends up looking rather like a sausage, a link of sausages. For the half square units, once you have this total chain piece finish, all 16 units, go ahead and snip those apart and press them toward the dark fabric.